In 1513, a Turkish admiral sat in Constantinople and drew a map of the world. That alone is unremarkable. Cartographers had been drawing world maps for centuries, but what Piri Reis drew that year contained something that should not exist. Something that, by every rule of recorded history, was impossible. Tucked along the southern edge of his parchment, rendered in careful ink on gazelle skin, is a coastline. A long, curving, geographically accurate coastline of a continent that no human being would officially set eyes on for another 307 years. You are not misreading that. The map shows Antarctica, and that is only the beginning of what makes this document one of the most disturbing objects in the entire history of human knowledge. Piri Reis himself was not a mystery. He was a real, documented, historically significant figure. Born around 1470, he served as an admiral in the Ottoman Navy, fought in multiple naval campaigns, and was eventually executed in 1553 for reasons that remain disputed. He was also a serious scholar of geography and navigation, and he was careful enough to write his sources directly onto the map itself. In the annotations scattered across the parchment, Piri Reis explains that he compiled his map from approximately 20 source maps. Some of these sources he identifies as dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. Others, he notes, were captured from Spanish sailors. One, he claims, was drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. The implications of that source list are staggering, because it means that Piri Reis was not inventing what he drew, he was copying. And whoever drew those original source maps had access to geographic knowledge that the official timeline of exploration cannot explain. In 1960, a letter was sent from the cartography department at Keene State College in New Hampshire to the United States Air Force. The letter was written by Professor Charles Hapgood, who had been studying the Piri Reis map for years. In that letter, Hapgood asked the Air Force's map division to examine the southern coastline on the map and compare it to their own survey data of Antarctica. The response he received back from Lieutenant Colonel Harold Ohlmeyer is one of the most quoted documents in the entire controversy. Ohlmeyer confirmed that the coastline on the Piri Reis map does appear to correspond to the subglacial topography of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. The coastline that is shown, he noted, was a coastline that only became known to modern science after the seismic surveys of the International Geophysical Year of 1957 and 1958. Ohlmeyer could offer no explanation. He simply confirmed the correspondence and noted that it was, in his words, remarkable. That word, from a military cartographer examining one of the most sensitive geographic databases in the world, carries a weight that is difficult to dismiss. The mainstream academic response has ranged from skeptical to dismissive, but the dismissals have never been entirely clean. The most common counterargument is that the southern landmass on the Piri Reis map is not Antarctica at all, but rather a speculative terra australis, the hypothetical southern continent that European cartographers began including on maps in the early 16th century simply because they believed such a landmass must exist to balance the weight of the northern continents. This was a real cartographic convention, and it is a legitimate point. Many maps from the 1500s and 1600s show a massive southern continent that is clearly imaginary. The problem is that the Piri Reis version is not clearly imaginary. The problem is that it is too accurate. A hypothetical continent drawn from pure philosophical speculation should not match the subglacial topography of a real continent that would not be physically surveyed for 4 more centuries. Speculation does not produce precision. Imagination does not generate the correct position of mountain ranges beneath 2 miles of ice. What makes the Piri Reis map genuinely disturbing is not any single feature. It is the accumulation, the accuracy of South America's eastern coastline before it was fully explored, the presence of the Andes before they were crossed, the position of the Falkland Islands before they were discovered by European sailors, and then Antarctica, drawn at a latitude that places it correctly, shaped in a way that echoes the real subglacial coastline, sitting at the bottom of a map compiled by a man who explicitly stated he did not invent his sources but inherited them. Each anomaly alone could be argued away. Together, they form a pattern that demands an explanation, and the explanations that have been offered are not satisfying.